I was asked recently from some kids at a talk I was giving, wouldn't you go back? And I said, you know, there's a fabric that exists, and you can destroy a fabric very easily. Just like all of us left, it's very hard to create a genesis and recreate it. Who's going to go back? To what? Those houses don't exist anymore. That culture, that family doesn't exist. My children don't relate to it. There's been 6 generations. The entire society has become extinct. It wasn't just stolen from Jews, it was stolen from the whole human race. 3,000 years is taken away. And it was stolen from the Muslims. They stole it from each other. Because as human beings, we can only survive if we're able to share and not being a monopoly of one society. So interestingly, I'm still a citizen of Iraq. And I have this passport to show that. So here is the passport which in 1961 allowed me to continue to travel. In the passport it says I was Iraqi by birth as opposed to an Iraqi citizen. I'm not sure what the context of that at the time was. By today's standards, currently I'm able to, I am a citizen of Iraq, a dual citizen because I'm a citizen of the United States, and I'm also able to vote in the elections of Iraq, as well as my children, because by the fact that I have this passport, gives them citizenship rights. So, so this is now very interesting, but we have nothing to go back to, unfortunately, because I attempted to go through the voting process in the initial election of Iraq a couple of years ago, and the problem was there was not a single party that wanted to have Jews come back or retain any of their property. So sadly, there's nothing to go back to. But perhaps one day in the future, my children and my grandchildren may be able to at least reclaim part of their heritage. I will tell you, culturally speaking, that Jews were very much Jews and aligned to what happened with Israel. But Israel didn't exist when I was born. But culturally speaking, they were also nationalistic. I mean, we were rooted in Iraq. That was our homeland. And so this style of dress for Jews was more modern, more European. We kind of got our hints from England and France and the United States. And I think mostly English. That was a very, the style that we carried. My mother used to kind of dwell on what Queen Elizabeth was doing and the current movie stars in America at the time. This was in the 50s. I recall that very vividly. And so when the dress was there, the dress was very European, more English, French style. And occasionally you would see some people wearing a dishdasha, which is a long robe. But that was more of the Muslim society that tended to dress that way. I think by the time I was aware of things, I recall there was not a big difference in the style of attire, and the fashions of women was typically, you know, just like women over here. The cosmetics were very similar, and they dwelt in that same way. And it was interesting because I did have one instance where I went to a Muslim school for a summer. So my parents sent me to a summer school, and the style of education was different. It wasn't as free, it was more strict. That's not to say it's good or bad. I was too young to really understand how it was, but I recall when the kids sat down, they were very strict, and you had to sit coming into the room like this, and I was really, aside from the fact of being the only Jewish person in that room, and I was kind of nervous about that, because how do you speak to someone like that? What do you talk about? It wasn't quite the lines. I wasn't there long enough. And when I went home, I begged my parents to get me out of that school. I was so uncomfortable about it. And they did. But, you know, as opposed to going back to the Jewish school, which was more persistent in terms of getting your studies. Now, they were allowed to hit you at the time in those worlds. So a teacher taking a ruler and smacking you was not unheard of. But at the same time, the focus was, did you get your work done? Did you get your studies done? You know, by the first grade, we were able to have, we had to know the multiplication table 1 to 12. That was the first week in first grade. So we were able to be very advanced in our education. And so it was a culture that was very wonderful. The food was, oh gosh. I mean, you really define a culture by several things. By the food you eat, the music you have, the ability to socialize. And I think if anything gets passed down is those smells, those aromas, those fragrances from those times, you know, as we pass on to our children, because we can't pass the land. The roots of Iraq are represented by what we can cook with music that we can, that rhythmic kind of Middle Eastern music that comes not from Jews or Muslims, but really culturally Middle Eastern. And the sounds of those things. That's why when I talk about my cousin having his 50th wedding anniversary in Los Angeles in a haute couture place, they brought in, interestingly, a Christian band that played this wonderful rhythmic blue music that anyone, whether you were American or European or it was not about religion, it was about kind of letting the vibrations come through your body, and you were able to dance to it and hum it. And so these are wonderful things, you know, and fashions come and go. So those disappear, but food doesn't, and music doesn't, and the language doesn't, because you speak in words, just like people speak in Yiddish or Southern American or French. That same language of Arabic, when you come in and built into the language of America today, my kids now use these words to express their feeling or their thoughts and add it. So somehow part of those threads in our tapestry is part of that culture that we're adding to our societies here today.